Yeah, so I thought about what my responsibilities are in this situation, and it occurred to me that if indeed he has been talking to other women, then the situation isn't just about me, it's also about them. So, I went ahead and contacted the one I was aware of and told her that not only had he been sexting me at the same time that he knew her, but that I could provide evidence of such. And what she said was interesting because she seemed very much his type, but she was like, no, he and I weren't seeing each other, um, you know, and, she thanked me for warning her about him. Um, yeah, I've gone ahead and cut him off on most services. I haven't blocked him, but I have unfollowed him on Insta. I've forced unfollowed him from me on Insta. Uh, I've deleted his number off of my phone. I've deleted his chat with me on WhatsApp. I've gone through and deleted a lot of the things that I left with him on Discord. Um, Not everything, because like I said, I wanted to retain evidence, and I have saved a few screen caps as a consequence. Because the great thing about Discord is it shows the time and date right next to the message. So basically, if a woman contacts me later being like, "Hey, you know, I felt, did he do something with you at such and such a time?" I can be like, "Here's evidence," and this process came in handy when I had to confront my ex's fiance about him sending me, footage of him playing with himself. So, yeah, I figure it's a good idea now if I'm getting the sense that this guy is shady. And yeah, just the more I think about it, the more I'm like, wow, for him to be talking to me like I lack honesty and integrity when he literally just dumped me for a little while so that he could talk to this other, because he was definitely talking to her. They didn't end up seeing each other. They ended up not talking. But you know what I mean? He misled me. He was not honest with me. And certainly he could make the argument of, well, I got honest later. But, is it my job to be okay with that? And in the conversation he and I were having, he's like, you're always speculating," and he might mean, I should ask him more questions, and I would love if he and I had would have had those open lines of communication, but very often I felt as though I was trying to wrench that open and he was slamming it shut in my face. I really had that feeling because a lot of the time it was me trying to be like, okay, here's this thing we can do to get to know each other, or even he was suggesting things, and then he was running away from me. It was just running, running, running. And yeah, I feel a bit sad, but at the same time I'm just like, when he was initially messaging, we were having, fun together. I was very nervous of him, but at least our messages to each other were nice and fun and friendly. Um, but yeah, just in as time went on, it became less and less the case, and at this point I'm just like, what am I even losing, really? You know what I mean? What have I lost? If he didn't, you know what I mean? My overarching sensation about him is just that he was 100% in it for himself. He did not care about how I felt. Um, you know, he there was so many times when I would be trying to have a meaningful conversation with him and just getting nothing but silence. Silence, silence, silence. And yeah, I just sort of feel like he doesn't get to like be that uncaring and then, ask me to care more. Like I feel like I gave all I could. I feel like I gave the situation all that I could within reason without, psychologically completely destroying myself. And, so for him to be acting like I wasn't doing enough, for him to be acting like, well, you know what I mean? There are guys out there who would say that I am woman enough, and so for him to be out there looking for other chicks, it's just, you know what I mean? I'd much rather be with somebody who considers me to be enough. Um, you know, yeah. Sorry, I got messaged this morning by a customer. Oh, hold up. Oh, okay. Sorry, my phone just glitched for a moment, and it made it look like I only had one order waiting for me on Etsy, even though I have more like 3. Um, yeah. And right now I'm sitting here going, okay, Shona, is this one of those cases where your imagination has run away with you and you know, you've burnt a bridge behind you for no real reason? But if I stop and think about the kind of person he turned out to be versus the kind of person I thought he was, um, they're two totally different people. And, when I think about the way I felt yesterday when I was already quite upset and then he was telling me off, like, and I was so, I felt so emotionally attacked that I even considered for a while no longer vlogging. Like, I've just felt so cowed and so hurt. And it just, you know what I mean? I just feel like if he had something he wanted to say to me, he had 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to say it, it's the internet. He could have contacted me anytime to say anything. And, he didn't, he does, and then he's saying, well, I didn't want to know. Like, where is he getting this? Like, where is he getting this idea that I didn't want to know? Because I feel, like, part of the reason I'm so angry and frustrated at the situation is that I feel like I was trying so hard just to get to know him. Like, not even necessarily to have a relationship, but just to connect with him, just to spend time with him. And like I said, he might want to say, oh, I was busy. He wasn't too busy to be talking to other women. He wasn't too busy to be talking to other people. He was able to make the time for doing things with them. And, like, I don't want to stick hard and fast to this rule, but this is sort of why I take the stance of, like, within myself, I feel less likely to date a guy who's hardcore into gaming. Not because I'm automatically like, oh, they're too much like a nerd. Actually, if it was just that, I would think, cool, that's hot. But because but the reality is, with these sorts of gamer guys, the gaming they will always put the gaming ahead of their significant other or anybody trying to be their significant other. They will not, you know what I mean? That you will come first for them in ways that they will never come first for you. And yeah. But yeah, I mean, certainly the argument can be made, well, Shona, he just didn't want you, though. Like, if you were a woman he really wanted, then he would have made the time. And yeah, that's probably true. That is probably true, because like I said, he was making time for these other women that he has been talking to, and I just wasn't worth that time. And I just sort of feel like, why even bother, like, talking to me anymore? Like, if he's going to look at other women, if he's going to talk to them, why even do this? And uh yeah. Yeah, I was willing to overlook it. I was willing to overlook the possibility that he had seen someone else while he and I were not talking about, while he and I were just friends. Like, I was okay with that possibility. But the fact that he has continued to review them as potential partners, even once he has retracted his rejection of me, like that, yeah, and he wasn't upfront about it either. He wasn't open with me about that fact. He hid it. And yeah, um People could look at my videos and be like, well, Shona, but you were talking to somebody else. Yeah, but I was only talking to somebody else because this guy was clearly not that into me. Like, that was the only real reason I was looking at other options. If he had been that into me, I wouldn't have been talking to these other guys. Like, you know what I mean? He does, like, yeah. I, I don't feel like he gets to act like I'm rejecting him when he's rejected me repeatedly throughout this situation, you know? Um, yeah. I mean, certainly you could be like, well, but back at the start, you were talking to two men at the same time. Yeah, I was, but that was back at the start. Like, that was back when I didn't know either of these people. And, you know, once I could see that something serious was starting up with one of them, I decided to put the other aside. And, like, yeah, I don't like that I was in this situation. I would not, like, I don't like that multiple guys ended up in my life at the same time. And, yeah, the guy, yeah. What my brain is doing right now is remembering times in my life where I was with that first guy that really, like, the first time I was in a serious relationship, and a lot of the time the guy would do things that really hurt me, and so I would leave him messages telling him how I felt about it. Because, you know, it was a long distance relationship. Predominantly we were communicating via text message. And, yeah, I would send him messages saying, hey, this thing you did really hurt me. And admittedly, my words were sometimes excessive. And, yeah, I mean, I don't know. He said my words were excessive. And, you know, um, yeah. The the thing that he would often say at times like that would be telling me that I was giving him a bad day. You know, and he wasn't the only one to do it. There was a guy much later who I dated who had this similar attitude of he should be able to unload upon me and treat me however he wants, hurt me however he wants. And then if I object, he gets to say, you're giving me a bad day. You're giving me heart disease. You're giving me a hard time. And I'm just, you know what I mean? It's just like, well, you know what I mean? If you can't take it, don't give it, you know? If you can't take someone giving you a hard time, don't be giving me a hard time. Like, and you might say, well, but Shona, you're a Christian, you're not meant to take revenge. I don't think confronting somebody who has hurt you is a case of giving them a hard time. I think it's a case of holding them accountable for their behavior on a basic level. And if they can't take that responsibility, they lose the right to ask me for anything, I think. I think that, you know, well, okay, they have the right to ask me for things, but they lose the right to hold the expectation of, here's how I want to be treated, you treat me this way. Like, when did my desires matter to these people? Like, to these people, when did what I want matter? You know? Did they ever really make room for my desires, my needs? You know? Did they, when I told them what I wanted or needed, did they ever take that into account? No. So why am I, you know what I mean? Why do they think they're entitled? You know what I mean? What are they really entitled to? And, you know, I mean, a lot of people would say, well, Shona, that's how men are. They're entitled creatures. They think that that you owe them everything just because they're a man and you're the woman. And, you know, yeah. Like, okay, a thing that right now I'm feeling proud of myself for is that in the past, societal status would have meant so much to me that I wouldn't have felt like I could stand up to this guy. I just because he's of a different socioeconomic sphere and he's, you know, attractive and he's young, I would have felt in the past like I had no right to stand up for myself. But, you know, I think one of the things that comes of realizing how little those things really matter is learning that people cannot buy the right to treat someone else like crap. You can't see. This is partly why I get frustrated with guys who talk like women just want money and cars and, muscular guys. Because the implication is that all of those things are somehow more important than how you actually treat people. And, it, it would be very easy for somebody to look at how I've handled the situation and be like, you're just mad at him because he wasn't giving you what you wanted. He wasn't willing to settle down with you at all. He wasn't willing to make any kind of commitment to you. That's like a real surface issue. Because I don't just want to settle down. I don't just want to get married. I want to have a lifelong bond with somebody who genuinely cares about the way that I feel and who can allow me to genuinely care about them. And this guy couldn't offer me that. It's not a simple case of him just lacking integrity. It's it even if he had, like, I'm friends with a guy who lacks integrity, and yet I'm still able to keep that going because at the very least, you know what I mean? He still treats me with some basic respect and consideration. I don't feel like I have to earn his attention. He's not placing me in this position where I'm having to, like, be a particular way to keep him from talking to other women. He's been straight up like, yeah, here's the boundaries of our relationship with each other. We're just friends. I'm gonna see other people that are local to me, and so because he's been straight up with me and non-ambiguous, I can be like, okay, I am fine with this situation. You know what I mean? It's whereas this other guy, the whole time I've been dealing with him, it feels like I'm trying to grab a hold of. Okay, the image coming to mind is times when I would be out walking my dog, and I would be walking her with the expectation that certainly she might wriggle around, she might pull on my arm, but at the very least she would stay on the lead. You know what I mean? At the very least she would work with me to that extent. Because but then she would somehow get herself out of her collar and she would be running down the street and I would be chasing after her, trying to catch her, chasing, chasing, chasing. And there would come these moments where she would be like right in front of me. She'd stop right in front of me and I'd think, great, I can finally catch her. And I would just about get my arms around her. And then she'd be gone again. And, and I'd have to run, run, run again. And, this has very much felt like that. It's very much felt like I've been trying to get this guy to just, like, I'm not even, like, it's not necessarily a question of asking him directly for a commitment. If he could have, like, if I didn't have the sensation that he was so fugitive, that he was so, keen to get away from me, all of this would have been a lot easier to tolerate. Everything would have been fine. Even the fact that he didn't want to commit, I would have been fine with. In fact, I was completely in favor of that notion, largely because he and I don't know each other that well. So it doesn't, you know what I mean? A commitment would not make sense out of that. But, you know what I mean? I very much felt, uh, just like, I had no real sense that I was somebody he really wanted to deal with. I had no sensation that that I had any value to him. Well, apart from the only time I would get any sensation of value from him, of like him valuing me, is when he would be, uh, trying to get something sexual going with me. And, it reminds me very much of something I read about online where, there are a lot of horrifying resources directed towards men on dating, and one of them said that, here's how you basically brainwash a woman into offering you sex whenever you want it. And it talked about how you could strategically pay her attention and then ignore her a lot of the time, and then only acknowledge her once things get sexual, and imply things so that she forms an emotional attachment to you beyond just the sexual, but don't, you know what I mean? Never really let her feel contented with you. Always leave her with a sense of dissatisfaction, and that way, whenever you want sex from her, you can just ask her for it, and she'll give it because it's become the only way she can hold your attention, and she's hungry for it. You know, this is a horrible thing that I found on the internet some years back. I hope that it's been taken down, but the truth is, times being what they are, there's probably plenty more resources like that out there. And, you know, I mean, I like to believe that most women would realize that on an emotional level that they're not getting what they want from this particular man. And I think inevitably what would happen is the woman would eventually meet a man who would not treat her this way and would instead offer her real love and affection, and so she would naturally leave behind this guy that's playing with her feelings. But I do wonder if this guy was attempting a similar kind of scam on me, where he was trying to, um, say maybe and later, and, we need to get to know each other more. And, yeah, given the amount of time I spent trying to connect with him and trying to talk to him, and then for him to act like all of that was nothing, I just sort of feel like, well, if it's nothing to you, if I've put that much effort into trying to connect with you, and you still are going to act like that's nothing, F that S. I don't need this. This is BS. This is, you know what I mean? Like, how hard am I meant to work for this guy, And what am I getting for that work? Like, is he, treating me like a nice person? Is he, you know, does he compliment me away from him paying sexual attention to me? No. So, it all just seems really one-sided. It all seems really selfish on his part. And I get that in an earlier video I talked about how people like me who suffer from anxiety and issues will often feel like they're working a lot harder than the other person is, and they'll naturally feel put upon to a degree that is possibly disproportionate to the situation, precisely because they're having to work so hard just to be there. And, it is often going to feel as though the partner is doing nothing, or nothing of significance, not enough for that person to feel comfortable. Um, you know, but it's just like, fudge. Yeah. I just feel really angry at him. I feel really angry. Um, yeah, one of the things I don't like about these videos I do is that they seem to imply that men are all I think about, or that I spend all of my time just worrying about men. Which isn't really true. There's a lot of other things going on in my life. Like, just earlier I was, like, on a Sunday I don't like to work. On a Sunday I like to try to just rest and relax and focus on improving my mental health and doing self-care and things like that. Um, but, one of the things that happened was that I got messaged by somebody interested in one of my products, so I had to get out some fabrics and take a photo for them. And I'm not complaining about that. I'm actually happy that people are taking an interest in my products. Um, yeah, but, yeah, I didn't like having to get out of bed so early to take care of something like that on a Sunday. I really would have preferred to just keep on sleeping. Frankly, after what happened, I feel like I could use a lot more sleep. And the thought entering my head is, Shona, what if all of this that seems to be happening is purely a product of your anxiety? What if he's really not that bad of a guy? What if he's actually a nice person and you're incapable of seeing it because your mental health challenges are keeping you from seeing it. But then I think, no, this guy, this guy admitted to seeing other people at the same time that he was talking as though he was looking at the potential for a serious future with me. Like, it would have been fair enough if he had been talking to me consistently as though we were just getting to know each other, and if he had been making the time to get to know me, that would have been fine. I would have been fine with that. But the fact that that was not what was happening, that instead he was giving me the runaround, that he was playing games, that he was being like, yeah, I'll spend this time with you, I'll get to know you, and then he wasn't, like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's just... And he's going to want to argue, but you didn't talk to me about it. Yes, I did talk to you about it. I initiated that conversation repeatedly, and you did not honor that. You did not honor that. You rejected me and you refused me. And you know what I mean? It was easier back when I could say to myself, well, he just wasn't that into me. He just didn't want me. He just, I wasn't what he wanted. But, you know what I mean? He was the one that retracted that. He was the one trying to claim, no, it's not that you're unattractive to me. It's not that I don't want to date you. It's you know what I mean? It's just that you want a commitment I can't give you right now. Like, with the implication being that he would give it to me later if only conditions were right. But that's not, you know what I mean? I'm having to think to myself, did he willfully word things that way so that I would end up believing that there was hope when there wasn't? And I think that he did, frankly. I think that he deliberately misled me. And yeah, I'm mad about it. I'm mad about, I'm mad about the way I can look back to I can scroll back up to when he and I were first talking and see that at that point he was really interested in getting to know me. He was really interested in asking me about my life. He was, interested in, seeing photos of me. And then later on, a point came where I went ahead and gathered some of the photos he had asked me for and sent him the URL. And he never said a word to me about them. He never said a word. And certainly the argument can be made, well, Shona, did you ask him? Did you ask him? How many times do I have to ask him? How many times should I have to ask him before he just tells me things? How many times? 100 times? 1,000,000 times? How many times? And there were plenty of times when I did ask him point blank questions, and then he'd go to bed, or he'd, And the question I'm asking myself right now is this video the most effective way that I could vent these feelings of anger? Is this the best way? And I feel like it is, in a way, because I often think that men have no idea just what they put women through. I often feel that men, there's all these red pill guys who are being like, oh, women just want this and they just want that. No! We're angry, we're difficult to deal with because you guys keep putting us through this crap, and we have to, psychologically manage ourselves. We have to protect ourselves from you because you will not give us the truth. You will not face us. We have to keep wrestling with you, and we have to keep, it's often in these situations, I just feel like I'm trying to, put pajamas on a toddler, and they're just squirreling away from me. And it's just fair enough if you don't want me and you're going to act like that. Fair enough. But if you want to be here, be here. If you want to go, go. Don't be doing this thing of, oh, maybe. What is there maybe? Either I'm worth knowing or I'm not. Either I'm worth your time or I'm not. That is the real commodity that I'm after from a man, frankly. I want time. I want to be worth his time. I don't need all of his time. I don't want all of his time. But bloody hell, if you're going to say to me that we're going to watch a movie together, you watch that freaking movie with me. You don't be, you know what I mean? And if you're not going to, fair enough. If you don't want to do it, fair enough. But then at least have the decency to talk to me about it. Have the decency to say, oh, I didn't want to. I just made up my mind that you were not worth the time and I wanted to see other women instead. How hard is it to say that? How hard is it to admit that? But that is not what he wanted to admit. And then he's going to act like it's my fault, like I'm the bad guy, because I didn't ask him those questions? I shouldn't have had to ask those questions. Because from the start, I was even saying to him, are you sure about this? Given that we want such different things, are you sure that you really want to move ahead with me? And he was talking like, yeah, we'll get to know each other. We'll see what happens. We'll take the natural steps. And what freaking natural steps are there? Like, what steps were you taking? Because it looks like the steps you were taking was running the frig away from me. That's the sense that I'm getting. Okay? And it's angering because I tried so hard to be nice and patient, and I tried so hard not to allow, the anger that I was feeling towards him to impact the way that I treated him. And I was trying so hard to not demand more of him than he was ready to give. Like, I was trying so hard. And in the end, I get blamed? I'm getting the blame? Really? That's what I'm worth? Like, really? Well, that's not what I'm worth. That's just what I'm worth to him. And there are other people who actually, you know what I mean? They think I'm worth more. And yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, the thing that I will observe is that I did ovulate about 2 or 3 days ago. And typically around ovulation time, I do get a bit crazy. I do become more inclined towards anger and depression and anxiety. Like, I'm so mad that I'm having to, like, do this to, like, calm myself. You know what I mean? I'd rather not say what I'm imagining that I'm cutting off right now. I'm that mad. I'm really that mad. Like, it's so hard because I was trying so hard to access who he really was, to get to know him. And then for him to turn around and be like, you didn't want to know what I had to say? No. I was dying for him to open up to me. I was angry with him partly because he would not open up. And, like, he was the one making the decision to not open up to me, to not communicate. He was the one who made the decision to not follow through on the, activities he was saying we would do together, and then he's going to say to me that it's my fault, that I should have communicated more. He was the one who made these decisions. That's not my decision. That's not in my power. If I had full control over that situation, he would have been getting to know me, because we would have been doing things together on a regular basis. You know what I mean? So he doesn't get to put that on me. He was the one making that decision, not me. My decision was, we get to know each other. We do the activities we talked about. That's my decision. He said no. He was the one saying no, not me. He was the one doing the rejecting, not me. And the thing that I'm noticing about myself, that's like, back when he was rejecting me, I was a lot happier afterwards, because my thought was, I've just been in this situation with this guy who has been, blowing me off to the extent where I'm developing a state of such severe cognitive dissonance that I'm in anxiety, like, the better part of 24 hours a day. So now that he's rejected me, great, I'm free, I can move on to do other things with my life, I can go and be something other than a frightened person who feels like she's being used. and being misled. And so I decided to be happy, and I was happy. But this time around, I don't feel as happy. I'm sitting here making an angry video where I'm doing this behavior that I don't even normally perform when I'm angry. I'm like, the scissors were handy. I'm so mad. I just feel like doing this right now. And I am looking at this and thinking, is this a case of stimming? Like, is this evidence that I have an autism spectrum disorder? And it's possible, because frankly, this is providing me with some amount of relief. In fact, I've noticed that when I perform the behaviors that are typically associated with autistic stimming, I usually do feel better. And I do wonder, is that simply because those are therapeutic behaviors in the first place? And maybe it is, but well, this is probably also good exercise for my hands and wrists. Either that or it's going to give me carpal tunnel, I don't know. I'm going to put it down and give myself a rest. Yeah. So right now the thought in my head is, how can I spend the day so that I can feel better, so that I can most effectively recover? And my thought is, like I said, it's Gofuku no Hi. It's one of the kimono days. So what I would like to do is get dressed to the nines, do my hair, do my makeup, and head out to there's a cemetery not far from where I live that's really beautiful to take photos in. I mean, it might be closed due to lockdowns. Maybe I should look it up. But, even if that's closed, there are other parts of town I can go to for taking kimono photos. Because I want to get some autumn leaves into the photos, since it is, we're within the last 2 days of autumn now, I think, as far as I know. And, I was thinking I'd take some of my Japanese autumn snacks out there with me and just have like a mini picnic as I look at the trees. And I think that would be quite therapeutic for me. Just like I can see right now, just the thought of doing it is calming me down. I'm feeling a lot happier. I mean, because that was one of the great things I think that came out of that last rejection. And a thing that I'm re-experiencing now. It's that even though these guys might want to, even though these guys hurt me, they can't take away all of the good things from my life. They can't take away the good things about me. They can only take away whatever good that they might have put into my life. And this guy wasn't even putting any good that I could discern. He was not giving me anything. He was not, you know what I mean? I can list things that I was contributing to the relationship. But for his part, I can identify very little. You know? And insofar as I could list the contributions he made, they were largely neutral or even negative. And just, if I really think about it, it's beneath my integrity to participate in the kinds of things he was asking me for, when there is no emotional connection at all. Like, when he's not even trying to foster an emotional connection with me. And, yeah. So yeah. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. And, yeah. I'm looking at myself and I'm just like, yeah, I'm not a homely woman. Like, he might want to suggest that I'm not enough of a woman for him to be satisfied with me and that he needs to look elsewhere. But I'm enough of a woman in my opinion. I'm woman enough. And, there are other people who are going to agree with me. And even if they didn't, I don't have to be in a relationship, really. I don't have to be in a relationship to be happy and whole. You know what I mean? I am who I am, regardless of what other people want to put on me. And, yeah, on a basic level, one of the things that has changed about me is that I actually like who I am. I used to buy into the OTT version of absolute depravity within Calvinism. I used to believe that I was somehow obligated to believe that I'm not that good, that I'm a bad person, and that I need to be punished. Just not for having done anything wrong, but for who I actually am. And honestly, looking at the Bible, I don't think that that's actually what it's saying, because there are times when Paul has good things to say. You know what I mean? I'm going to create a separate video actually to talk about why I have problems with excessive Calvinism. Well, actually, I'm not even sure if it is exactly excessive Calvinism, because I'm not sure if Calvin would have gone along with this. But, yeah, just, on a basic level, yeah. Yeah, and I'm just remembering now how, in our conversations, the guy was like, I don't care about personality tests, I don't care about religion. And I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, these are two things that are immensely important to me. Like, fair enough if you don't care about them, but, that doesn't mean you get to crap on them to me. Like, and if you're going to crap on them, you know what I mean? And they're that important to me, why talk to me at all? Like, what is the purpose of this conversation, you know? And, yeah. So lesson learned, don't date Dutch guys. Don't, because the bluntness will kill you, and then they'll lie to you anyway. They'll mislead you about their true intent anyway. They won't, you know what I mean? They'll make it sound like you're going to have some sort of great future together, but actually they don't care. Well, okay, I'm generalizing. That's not fair. Not all Dutch people will be like this guy. But I guess I mean, okay, if you will date somebody, look for someone who has integrity. Look for somebody who's honest. Look for somebody who, you know what I mean, is not going to, like, yeah, try to put one over on you. Because honestly, yeah. I'm hearing that my phone is receiving messages, and I'm just like, yeah. Okay, so yeah, it's just random stuff. Look, I'm going to be honest and say that I'm kind of hoping that he will contact me and be sorry. That he'll be sorry and that he'll try to do better, like he'll try to do right by me. Um, that he'll, for one thing, stop stop blaming me for his lack of involvement. Because it's not, like, if he's just not that into me, that's not my fault. Like, it's arguably it's no one's fault. Um, it's just how things are sometimes. And yeah. Yeah. I can remember when I was younger, I would have put up with the situation for a lot longer. I would have tried a lot harder to earn his love. Because when I was younger, my assumption would have been, if I can just get this guy to be in a relationship with me, to love me, he'll treat me better. But what I've learned from my relationships is that you can be with a guy for years, and he can even seem to love you, but he can still treat you like trash. Like, just because you're in a relationship together, just because you're in love with each other, it doesn't mean you're going to actually treat each other with any dignity. You have to actually have the integrity to do that. And, yeah, it does take integrity, because, in your relationships, there's always going to be this temptation to do right by yourself and not think about the other person. There's always going to be the temptation to put your own feelings of fear or anger ahead of what the other person needs from you. Um, and certainly, a person could look at the choices I've made right now and say, well, isn't that exactly what you're doing though, Shona? Aren't you protecting yourself ahead of this guy? Well, if I had any sense that he needed anything from me, I would not be making this choice right now. I would not have made that decision, but the fact that he made me feel that disposable, that he treated me like I was like worthless, um what it tells me is that I didn't have anything he needed. I didn't have anything he wanted. Like, if he was even talking like I was like a stranger to him. And I'm like, I've been talking to you for as long as I have. I've been trying this hard for you to get to know me, and you're still going to tell me that I'm a stranger? Like, you wouldn't, like, I was initiating all the conversations, and he thinks he gets to tell me, oh, I don't know you enough. I don't know. Damn it. Damn it. But look, I think part of the reason I was recovering better the last time was, in my head, my thought was, I'm going to act like he's nothing. I'm going to convince myself that he's nothing and nobody to me. And that way I can move on super quick. And there was an extent to which that was true at the time. Um, yeah. And I feel a little mad because there was this day, like not that long ago, where I was relaxed. I was like, this guy and I have a mutual attraction for sure, and I can just relax and trust that to be true. And, because he and I had talked about it and he had seemed that into me, and then today I'm having to learn that's not even true, that he was seeing other people at the same frickin' time. Like, nothing serious. Nothing serious. Well, he's not serious about me either, so what's that meant to mean? You know? I'm just really, yeah. So what if it's not serious? You wanted to get serious with those people, otherwise you wouldn't have been prioritizing your time with them ahead of me. You know, yeah. And he was acting so mad at me, like he was, and it almost felt like he was kind of angry with me from the get-go, frankly. Honestly, I suspect he just has a problem with women in general. I suspect he just, like, he's had some kind of bad history with women, and therefore he thinks, oh, it's okay for me to treat them like garbage. And what's worse about him is he's not willing to discuss that history or to interrogate that history. Over and over again, he was just like, yeah, I don't care about this. I don't want to, I don't think the past matters. If the past didn't matter, this situation wouldn't be happening, though. Like, if it was completely irrelevant. But, you know what I mean. Um, so the fear in my mind, is that I'm going to get tempted into trying to reconnect with him. But historically, what I know is that if a blow up like this happens with a guy, typically it's not a one-off. Typically his behavior is going to be like this over and over again into the future. It's typically not a one-off. It works out to be a pattern of hostile, cruel, selfish behavior that I end up having to endure and having to, cope with in order to maintain the relationship. And again, in the past, when I didn't value and respect myself, I was willing to put up with that kind of treatment. But now I have too much self respect. Um, yeah. And you know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't have to be upon me to be the one divvying out all of the compassion, all of the understanding. Like, that should not be upon me. That, like, and it hurts to think that I cared that much for somebody who saw me that way. It hurts to think that I was trying that hard, and for somebody who wasn't giving me anything, who had no interest in how I felt or what I needed, um, you know what I mean? Who just wasn't even trying to connect, and then wanted to blame me for that lack of connection. Like, you know what I mean? How hard was I meant to try? How hard? Um, yeah. hard was I meant to be trying, really? How, you know what I mean? Because it was all, you know what I mean? How, if I just couldn't even hold his attention to, if, and at moments like these, it's very easy for me to be like, oh, there's something the matter with me, and that's why I keep having these problems with men. When no, it's documented that psychologically there's a lot of problems in society that are making relationships a lot harder than they need to be. There's a cultural climate that's making it more complicated, and it's not just my opinion. It's not just my opinion. There's a lot of other people saying the same thing, that there's just so much toxicity out there, and that there's just so many problems. And I can even identify the causes for those problems. I think the internet has changed a lot about how dating works. That there's a lot of bad ideas on the internet about how dating works that is perpetuating the problem. And, so for me to sit there and be like, no, it's just me, it's just me, it's just my fault. It's not just my fault. It's not just my fault. It's a lot of things. And, yeah. Again, people might want to say to me, well, Shona, isn't this just a case of you being too rigid, too unforgiving, too this, too that? If you were an emotionally healthy woman, wouldn't you be braving this situation? No, an emotionally healthy woman wouldn't remain in this situation. An emotionally healthy woman would move on. Because, you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense for you to be giving that much of yourself for someone who doesn't appreciate it. For somebody who's just going to treat you like your yesterday's laundry. Yeah. And I am aware that my experiences from my past are probably shaping my perception of this situation in ways that I cannot help. You know, because that was the thing. Like, I wanted to go and verify whether or not the guy from 2 years ago really did end up forming a relationship with that girl. And I found evidence that she is in a relationship for sure. But you know what I mean? I haven't been able to find evidence verifying that it's with him. And it matters because it's a very clear indication on a lot of things. It's a clear indication for me about whether or not platonic friends really can be as close as he and she were, whether or not he was telling me the truth, whether or not the way the situation turned out is actually my fault. But then as I say that, I think that's the past. Like, that's history. And I want to, you know what I mean? I want to think about the future. And what do I want to do with my future? And, you know what I mean? Like, one of the things I've thought about is how, even if I did successfully form a relationship with a guy, that would actually take me further away from some of the dreams and life goals I have. It would take me further away from being able to buy a house in Kyoto and settle down there. It would take me further away from, you know, being able to live there temporarily. And, like, given how much my business means to me, like how, um, you know what I mean? I I get reliability from my work. From my work, I get a sense of accomplishment. I don't, you know what I mean? With my work, what I get out of it is proportionate to what I put into it. But with men, it always feels like this situation of me giving and enduring so much, and just, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I just feel crapped on. I feel crapped on. And, I have tried to talk to men about this feeling before, of feeling as though I'm doing the lion's share of the giving, and I don't really understand what they're contributing to the relationship, aside from, the stress and negativity that they give me, and the commands and demands that they're making of me. And, you know, looking back, I don't know how to answer that question, because it's like, if I'm the one having to be like, hey, let's spend time together, and they're being like, no, I'd rather not. I'd rather go do something else. And then they're blaming me for the relationship having problems. Like when they're the one refusing to spend the quality time. You know what I mean? It's like, and I get that not all guys are like that. I get that not all guys are like that. Some guys will make the time, some guys will give the time freely. Um, and yeah, it's just the fact now that those are the guys that I would rather give my time and attention to. Because at least it's equal then. At least it's balanced. It's not so one-sided as all of this. Um, yeah. And it's occurring to me that back when the guy initiated everything with me, he must have known that he was knowingly initiating a one-sided relationship, that I was going to want to settle down with him, and he was going to want to just play around. And certainly he tried to argue and say, no, that's not really what I want to do, but in the end what he did was he played around. He played around with how I felt, he played around with other women. And, you know, um, yeah. And I know that in the other video I talked about Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, but I don't think it is the same situation. I don't think it's the situation of him acting like, oh, one day, and then he shags these other women. Like, I think it's more likely that they stayed in contact, and he was shagging around a bit, and then he got married to her because, you know, they reconnected and they did fall earnestly in love. And yeah. Like, the thing that I'm getting from the situation, though, is that I value my self-respect now. Like, 'cause, yeah, in terms of how I handled everything, the sense I get about myself is self-respect. And, yeah. Um, yeah, and just on a basic level, why do I, you know what I mean? Why was he talking like I owed him something? I didn't owe him anything. Like, like, if he didn't care about how I felt, why do I owe him something? You know, in the past I would not have asked that question. I would have felt so beholden to the man, and I would have felt like I owed him everything just because he was paying me attention. And I don't think that way anymore. Nowadays I think, well, who's loving me? You know, I'm giving all this love. Who cares about me? You know? And I, you know, as I say that, I wonder, am I being too unchristianish as I say that? You know, am I not meant to be altruistic? But the thing is, even if I go out there and, like, give a bunch of things to the poor and love on the poor, um, you know what I mean? They're not necessarily going to lie to my face. Okay, sometimes homeless people have lied to my face or treated me rudely. I think, and one of them even sexually harassed me at one point. But you know what I mean? There are things I can do for the homeless that don't involve even having to take that. Like, I can send money to charities and things like that. Whereas, you know, in the case of this guy, you know what I mean? It's not an equivalent situation at all. Like, you know what I mean? And frankly, I don't think he would want me talking to him as, like, just a charity case anyway. Like, what kind of self-respecting person would even want that? Um, yeah. Like, I'm still trying to understand what he was doing, like, what he was really thinking. And it's happened before that I have tried to ask him these questions, and the answers he gives me are just so shallow, so flat, so You know what I mean? And there were times when I tried to ask him about how he felt about different things, and he wasn't opening up to me, you know? He wasn't telling me anything about what his experiences of life felt like. And granted, admittedly, within the past conversation he and I had, he had started to open up to me a little bit. Um, yeah. I'm wondering if the woman that I... Oh, wow, it's over the hour mark. Okay, I'm gonna stop here, because this is ridiculous.